Hello, so welcome to week 1. This first video is going to be an introduction into the GUI or graphical user interface of MasterCAM. What you're looking at on your screen right now is what you will see when you first open the program. This is MasterCAM 2020. We're going to review all the major areas of the screen. We're not going to do any drawing or any tutorial work in this video. I'm just going to kind of explain what each of these areas do and give you kind of a quick overview of what we're looking at. So there are two major areas of the screen we're looking at right now. So the first area we call the drawing area. That's the gray and white zone. So your drawing and your solid modeling and your machining all happens in this area here. To the left hand side is an area first showing toolpaths. If you look down at the bottom of this area, you'll also see we have solids, planes, levels, and recent functions. And this is all the default setup when you first open the software. The toolpaths area follows a tree structure, and I will be showing you what that looks like in a little bit. We'll also talk about the other tabs a bit later on in this video. In the upper part of the screen, you're going to see some different sets of tabs up here. We start in Home, and then we have Wireframe, Surfaces, Solids, Model Prep, etc. This is kind of how the whole system is built. So each tab has a main header, and then below that there are subsections. So there's a line section, an arc section. This is basically how each thing follows the structure. And then you will notice in some areas there are some drop downs in these commands, and that gives you access to other things. So line endpoints, you see that's just a one single command, and line close is just some options underneath there. I call these carrots in the future, so if I mention clicking on a carrot, that's what I mean by that. So again, right now we're looking at some main just basic drawing things. So this is where we draw some lines, geometry in general. Most of the labs that you do in this course are going to have solid models preloaded for you, but I am going to teach you how to draw geometry this first week, just because you may need it for reference points later on down the road. If you need boundaries or if you need to isolate an area, you still need to know how to do some 2D drawing in the system. But you won't be drawing parts or doing dimensioning in this. MasterCAM is set up so that you would take a CAD model out of a SolidWorks or a Pro-E or an Inventor and drop it in here pre-modeled. This software is really not meant for you to do basic CAD work in. You can do it, but it's very clunky, and it's not something I'd recommend regularly. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the tree structure. So right now you'll notice that everything is blank. We haven't loaded a machine into the software yet. If we scroll up and look through the top tabs and go to the right, you'll see a tab called Machine. When you click on that, on the left hand side you have an option to load a mill, a lathe, a wire like an EDM machine, or a router. We're going to start with milling. And we're going to, for now, load the default mill machine. Later on down the road, I will be showing you how to load the Haas post. And if you're not familiar with what a post processor is, it's actually the generator which creates the M and G code for a specific machine. So a Haas would have a different post than, say, like a Morisiki. Different CNCs have different post controllers. Now when I select mill default, you're going to see that the tree will begin to populate. So machine group 1 is the overarching top level structure of the tree, and then as we work our way down you see properties and toolpath groups. We'll discuss more of this later on down the road. You see we have stock setup and tool settings in here too. So this is just the basic start of a structure, and as we create tool paths and apply them to some geometry, you're going to see the tool paths actually generate underneath this group. You're also able to rename these, and we will be doing that in the course. So generally speaking, A toolpath group is going to be named an operation, and that operation may have 2, 3, 10 different milling or drilling toolpaths related to it. So in order to rename this, you highlight it once, and then I can say slow click. You highlight it and then click again, and you'll see that it actually highlights the name. And as far as operations go, for a stick structure, we would name this Op 10. So this would be the first setup, and it would include all the machining operations that we're going to perform on one side of the part. If we flip the part over to do some milling or drilling on the back of the part, that would then become Op 20, and so on and so forth. So every time you manipulate the part or change its orientation in a vise or other work holding apparatus, it's going to be a different operation number every time. Let's see, we won't get into actually adding operations in this video yet, so let me switch gears and go down towards the bottom here and look at solids. So again, right now it's blank. When you actually load a master or a SolidWorks file into this software, this will also populate, and it'll show you a list of solids that exist inside of the MasterCAM system. Planes are going to be your work coordinate system. There'll be a separate video on that later on, but in a nutshell, this is a Cartesian coordinate plane, X, Y, and Z. You're probably familiar with that at this point in time, so again, we'll talk about that later on in a separate video, because it's a very important part of this class. We're going to spend some time practicing and learning how to use that. Levels is very similar to what a layer would be in AutoCAD, if you're familiar with drafting at all. So as you generate entities, you would create different levels so you can isolate them. So just as an example, I'll show you. If I draw a line with that level active, you'll see we now have one entity there. I could create a new level, level 2. The blue check mark means it's active. If I draw another line, you'll see now there's an entity on level 2 and level 1, and you can turn them off as you need to. This becomes powerful later on down the road when you are having complicated models. You have different geometries, different lines you want to be able to turn on and off. The more items you have on the screen, the more important good level management becomes. So we're going to spend a lot of time discussing that too also. That's going to be its own separate video as well. As far as controls here in the graphical area, let's just draw a circle real quick so we can see this. So your middle mouse button is going to allow you to rotate parts and geometry in space. You can see the X, Y, and Z compass in the bottom left hand corner rotating. If you want to get back to a flat plane, you also have a right click menu, and as an example, you see we have top, front, right, and isometric as defaults. We can go and click on top to reorient the part. There's also a zoom function with your mouse wheel, so if you want to zoom in on a certain area, say I want to look at that smaller circle, you'd bring the cursor over to the smaller circle, and you could rotate your mouse wheel into it, and that it zooms in where your cursor is pointing. So if I zoom back out, and now I want to go look at this circle over here, I can move my cursor down to where I want to zoom into, and I can roll my mouse wheel forward. Everything else is a standard Windows-based kind of system, so left-clicking your mouse selects items. Again, right-clicking your mouse gets you into this subset menu here. You can also delete, just like you would normally. So say I wanted to delete one of these circles here, I could highlight with my left-click and hit delete on the keyboard. I also have an option of left-clicking an item, right-clicking, and then you also see we have a delete here. That's kind of your preference. There are a lot of shortcut keys that will probably be helpful for you as we start to learn the software, and I'll point them out as we use them. One that I use a lot is F9. So F9 shows you your 000 or your home position on your screen. And it's also an O snap position. So in general, if you start drawing something from scratch or you're importing a solid model, generally you would start by attaching it somewhere to that 000 structure. This is not related to the machine in any way. This is just your base point in the software. The planes that you create later on down the road will be related to the machine stuff as we're working. To that end, again, if you're familiar with 2D drafting, there are snaps. So if I do a line endpoint, see I can get the center of that circle. I also can do intersections. See I can get intersections there. A lot of different things. It's not as robust as a CAD system, but it is helpful to know that you have these snap points available. Midpoint is another one that I'll use a lot. Something didn't show up there. So there's a midpoint, snap, endpoints. You'll notice that as I'm working through this with you, I tend to use snap points a lot and a lot of references. I don't type in coordinates very often. I will be showing you how to do that, but for right now, you know, I'm just kind of showing you the basic areas, so we'll get into that some more. I think that's kind of an overview of the entire screen. One thing I didn't mention that I just did, you can actually do pick boxes for selections too. So if you left click and hold in one area and drag, you can select a number of different items all at once, and you can even delete them all at once too. You gotta be careful about that though, because you can easily delete stuff that you don't want to by accident. So again, this video is not for getting into specific commands yet. Just a quick overview. You're going to want to spend some time navigating around, checking things out. You will notice too, as you activate certain things, like for example, you see this Mill Toolpaths tab. That actually wasn't there when we first entered MasterCAM. It only showed up after you loaded the milling post, so you drop the machine into it. Okay, so as you enter different commands, you're also going to activate different things that are going to come show up. And I guess I didn't really get into this too. So you'll notice that when you enter a command, the actual area where the toolpaths area is on the left hand side becomes an entry area for whatever command you're in, right? So when I click on line endpoints shows up, and it gives you a bunch of different options here on how to actually draw your line. And one other thing I'll actually point out too before I end this video, this is actually an overlooked but very important part of the system. So if you look at this box here, when you enter a command, it's always going to give you a tooltip asking you or telling you what it wants from you. So if you ever get lost in a command that you're working with, always keep an eye out for this box and try to just follow what it's asking you. So in this instance, you know, it's asking for a first endpoint. I can click, and you see it changes to second endpoint, and then it resets the command. Okay. Now same deal, if you do a circle, it's going to tell you what it wants. So it's looking for a center point, right? You add the diameter, you stay in that command, you keep going. So you want to keep an eye out for this box. That's going to help you out a lot. So the next video, we're going to actually start talking about some specific commands in MasterCAM, and I'll explain in more detail. Please watch the videos first, and then go back and practice on your own. Try to watch before you go ahead and do some other stuff. I will see you in the next video. Thank you.